Are we ready?
Okay.
Well, it all sounds good. All right, let me start at the beginning. First of all, thank you all for coming tonight. I'd like to thank Philadelphia Libertarians for hosting this tonight. I've been trying to meet as many of the libertarian organizations as I can. Let me tell you how I'd like to do things. What I'd like to do is give you my stump speech. It's only about 10 minutes long. It's the same speech that I would give to a PTA group, or if I went to a candidate's night or anything like that. That way you'll learn a lot of the basics about me, about the party, things like that. Then after that, I'd like to talk about some things that affect us as libertarians, how I see the campaign unfurling. Sound good? Good. All right, let's start at the beginning. My name is Ken Krawchuk. I'm running for the Libertarian Party nomination for governor of Pennsylvania this year. I'm 60 years old. I was born and raised here in Philadelphia, North Philadelphia to be precise, front of the boulevard to be very, very precise. My wife and I have been married now for 36 years. We have 3 daughters, and our daughters pick on us because they say, all of our friends' parents are divorced and separated. What's wrong with you guys? I tell them, I haven't worn your mother out yet. Or either, more likely, she hasn't tired of me. Professionally, as I was mentioning before, I'm an information technology professional, and I hold 3 United States patents related to database theory. So if there are any geeks in the audience afterwards, maybe we can sit down and compare some notes. Just last year, I released my first novel, which I should have brought out. Atlas Snubbed. It's a parody sequel to Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. And I'm calling it my platform novel because it has a lot of the ideas in it as fiction that I'm running on this year. Most notably, the separation of society and state. I'm also a Toastmaster, as Maggie and I were talking about earlier today. I've been a Toastmaster for a little over 16 years. And I would highly recommend it. It's where I learned my public speaking ability. So I'm a family man, businessman, author, inventor, but most importantly, I'm a libertarian. I've been a libertarian since 1993, and I ran for governor of Pennsylvania against Ed Rendell in 2002 and Tom Ridge in 1998. So I've been around the block a few times. Now it's important to note that I'm a libertarian because we libertarians are different from the 2 old parties because we are the party of principle. Every law we support, every law we oppose can all be traced back to one central idea. The idea that your life is yours, that your property is yours, that you have the God-given, inalienable right to live your life your way without interference, provided only that you respect the rights and property of others. That's it. That's what it means to be a libertarian. Your life, your way. It's the golden rule on a political level. And the public has reacted very positively to this message. Since our founding in 1971, we have grown to become the 3rd largest party, hands down, outnumbering all the other third parties put together. That's also true in terms of elected officials. Last number I saw, we have about 145 elected or appointed officials nationwide, with 40 of those here in Pennsylvania. So roughly 1/4 of all elected libertarians, elected or appointed libertarians, reside here in Pennsylvania. I always like to refer to us as the 800-pound chihuahua. So that's something about myself, something about the Libertarian Party. Now, what can you expect from a libertarian governor? Well, obviously you're going to find somebody who's going to respect your right to live your life your way. As I've traveled the state, I hear all sorts of hot issues people have. But 3 of them keep surfacing all the time. And let me just touch on each one of those 3 briefly. First one, of course, as we mentioned earlier, is taxes. Who thinks taxes are too low? You can't hear me, the music's too loud. No, no, of course not. They're too high. And the reason why taxes are so high is because spending is high. And the reason why spending is high is because politicians love to glad hand your money on giveaway programs. In fact, government has been growing so much that it has been increasing in size and cost more than 3 times the rate of inflation for the last 50 years. In 1964, when you paid $100 for your state taxes, today that number is over $2,200. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat in office, doesn't matter if it's a Republican, doesn't matter if it's low inflation or the high inflation of the Carter era, government keeps galloping along more than 3 times the rate of inflation, that much faster. In 2002, when I ran against Ed Rendell, I stood up and I said, For the last 40 years, government is increasing more than 3 times the rate of inflation. Well, here it is 12 years later, and nothing has changed. And Maggie, you asked one of the reasons, you asked me about my reasons for running. That was one of them. Nothing has changed in 12 years. My message is the same today as it was in 1998 when I ran against Tom Ridge. In fact, when I just updated my website, it sat there with dust on it. After 12 years, I didn't have to change a word. We're the party of principle. Getting back on track, taxes are too high. Me, as governor, there's something that I can do about that. Not only did I bring my novel, I brought my job description, the Pennsylvania Constitution. And the Constitution gives all sorts of wonderful powers to the governor, and one of the best ones is the power of the veto. I am promising I will veto every single tax increase. So this growth in government, 3.5 times the rate of inflation, when I'm governor, that trend will end. I also have the line item veto. Can you imagine using that? Take that illegal registry of gun owners, defund it. Milk Marketing Board, defund it. Anything that's outside of the Constitution or any kind of pork barrel, they're going to have to override my veto to try and get that passed. So after 50 years, finally there's light at the end of that tunnel. You're going to see taxes start to go down. And in fact, what I'm planning on doing is phasing out the Pennsylvania personal income tax over the course of 4 years. This is how I'm planning to attack taxes and the size of government. That's issue number 1. Issue number 2 is crime. Crime in Pennsylvania, it's there. We can do a much better job of controlling it. Now, one of the best ways to control it, of course, is to recognize your inalienable right to keep and bear arms. But that's something that you folk can do individually. Me as governor, what I'm going to do, I found out an interesting statistic. According to the Commonwealth Foundation, 95% of all crimes are committed by 5% of the criminals. Again, going back to my job description, I am going to use my power over the parole. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to end parole for violent criminals. I think it's insane to let these guys out of jail, especially after we finally get them in through our convoluted criminal justice system. When I'm governor, they will serve every day of their sentence. Guaranteed to reduce crime. Since 95% of the crimes are committed by these 5%, if we keep them in jail, crime will go down. Now, when I've said that before, some people say, oh, come on, Ken, what are you going to do? You're going to blow up the size of our prisons? It's already 11% of the state budget. No. Not going to do that. Because right now, there are people in prison who don't belong there. I'm talking about pot smokers. Who thinks a pot smoker belongs in prison? Well, that music's still too loud. They can't hear me. Of course they don't belong in prison. And there are so many of them there. The last number I heard was from the Heartland Institute, when they said 59.9% of federal prisoners were there for drug offenses. That's why our prisons are overcrowded. And here in Philadelphia, we have our prison caps. And those prison caps are becoming so tight that we're finally releasing murderers and rapists from these overcrowded prisoners to make room for pot-smoking Grateful Dead fans. That's insane! Who would want to jail a pot smoker instead of a murderer? It just doesn't make sense. That's what their war on drugs is doing. Fortunately, I go back to my job description. I love this job description because I also have the power of the pardon. My first day in office, I promise I will pardon every single non-violent drug offender. Every one. Day one. Now, if they robbed from somebody or dealt drugs to kids, they're going to stay safely in jail. But if you were just kicking back, smoking on a doober, doing a line or something like that, you have a get-out-of-jail-free card from this governor candidate. So that's how I plan to attack crime. Definitely going to reduce crime, and we'll be able to close prisons once we start freeing some of these people who don't belong there. And it's not just pot smokers. Anybody who's in jail for something that's not a crime, they're going to get pardoned as well. If there's no victim, there's no crime. So let's say you're walking down the street and a cop says, "What's that bump?" He says, "Oh, you have a concealed weapon. You're going off to jail." Well, You have the right to defend yourself. You don't need, in my opinion, a permit. So if you are in jail because you didn't have somebody's piece of paper, as long as you were being responsible with the use of your firearm, you have a get out of jail free card. So that's crime. So we've done taxes, we've done crime, and the third one, some people say I should put second, education. Sometimes I think education is far too important to be left to government because they're making a mess of it, especially here in Philadelphia. I mean, the schools around here are famous, or infamous, I guess I should say. I have a plan to improve education. Actually, I have 3 plans. I call them low, medium, and high. The first one makes no change in funding. The second one cuts property taxes in half. And the third one eliminates property taxes. Let me touch on each one of those. Let's start with the first one. And it's the one that's the most politically viable. Right now, 93% of all kids in Pennsylvania all go to the same school system, the government school system. It's a virtual monopoly. And like all monopolies, costs are high, choice is low, and the quality is not exactly the best it could be. What I'd like to do is I would like to introduce competition into the government school system. Now, I'm not talking about competition like charter schools or cyber schools, something like that. No, no, no. I want to bring in somebody who's been ignored in this entire education discussion. And I'm going to use their power to break this monopoly. Who's that? The parents. Let's bring the parents into the equation. Specifically, what I'm proposing to do is that the parent can choose any government school for their child. And the funding that would have gone to the local school will follow the child to the school of the parent's choice. That way, good schools get more funding and they grow. Poor schools get less funding and will be forced to shut down. Now, when I say good school and poor school, I'm not talking about my opinion. I'm not talking about some unelected Board of Education in Harrisburg. And I think they're a little more that way, not that way. And I'm not talking about some out-of-state Common Core curriculum that the federal government's coming up with. I'm talking about what's good in the opinion of the parents. That way we can break the monopoly by having parents choose the best schools, so the bad ones will have to close down. Now that's another word people pick on me and say, oh, Ken, you're going to close my neighborhood school. No, 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 I'm not going to do that. Think of it this way. All the kids who are now going to this good school, they're overcrowded. Let's say it's Central. Definitely a good school. They're not going to be able to take all the kids. So what they can do is they can take over this closed school. And the same techniques that they used to make them such a popular school, they can bring that into the neighborhood. And this school, which was running poorly before, will now run better. And the best part of all this is, it doesn't cost any more money. The same funding that we have now is going to wind up going to the good schools in the parents' opinion. And that's something we can do overnight. No big deal. Now that's low. Let's go to medium. I live in Abington Township, just north of the city here. And a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, I went out on the web looking at private schools. What do they charge a year? And I was getting numbers $5,000, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000. Friends schools would be up around $20,000, $22,000, Germantown Academy, places like that. If you leave out the high-end schools, the average tuition around Abington Township is about $9,000 a year. A lot of money, but $9,000. But then I took the Abington District school budget, divided it by the number of students. Guess how much it costs to educate one child in Abington Township, in the government school? Over $18,000, versus an average of $9,000. If our school district, instead of running their Taj Mahals, if instead they placed the students in local private schools instead, we could cut property taxes in half overnight. Now, of course, we have to do that within the constraints of the Constitution, which Article 3, Section 15 does not allow for any state money to be used on sectarian schools. But there are enough private schools out there that are non-sectarian, Montessori's, things like that, that could be done. So that's medium. So there's low, where we have no change in funding, but schools improve. We have medium, where school's going to improve because kids are going to get a private education now for half the cost. Now there's high, which I call the great offer. It's simple enough. If you agree to educate your own child, you will never have to pay property tax again. Simple as that. Yes, you're looking at a $9,000 a year bill. Yes, you may have to get a second mortgage. But look at what you have now. You're paying this ridiculous property tax. You're paying it when you're 20, when you're 30, when you're 40, when you're 50, 60, 70, 80. You're still paying it year after year after year after year. Whereas if you pay for your own children's education, once that second mortgage is paid off, you'll be done. Just like that. Now when I talk to parents about this, everybody loves it. Of course, seniors love it because they don't have to pay for a service they're not directly using. Childless couples, they love it because, again, they wouldn't be paying for a service they don't use. People who are sending their kids already to a private school, they love it because they're paying double for their education. Once for that $18,000 a year in taxes, and once for their own kids $9,000. Even childless couples love it because they're going to wind up sending couples with children will love it because they're going to wind up sending their kids to private schools instead of to the one-size-fits-none government school. So there are my three approaches to education. Introduce competition, keep funding the same, partially privatize them, cut property taxes in half, or the great offer, where we eliminate property taxes entirely. Now there are a lot of other issues that I can go into. And the best thing I can do is say, go out and check out my website, kenk.org, kenk.org. I've got a whole bunch of things out there and I'm adding more all the time. So let me just leave you with one final thought. When I talk to people, a lot of them say, oh, Ken, I love your ideas. Yeah, we need to bring parents back, bring competition to the schools. Yeah, we got to release potheads from the prisons. You're right, we've got to do all these things. We've got to cut taxes. But you know, Ken, get real. You're not going to win. Wait a minute. Maybe not. The Democrats and Republicans have done a wonderful job of alienating voters. In your typical gubernatorial election, turnout is about 35, 38%, right in around there. If you crunch the numbers, in a competitive three-way race, all that it takes to get enough votes to win, a plurality, is to attract the vote of 1 out of 8 voting-age Pennsylvanians. 1 out of 8 is all it takes. Really, it's about 1 out of 9. It's right in around there, but I'll say 1 out of 8 be on the conservative side. So if you're sitting in a room, what do we got here? I don't know, maybe a dozen people? If most of you sit there and shake your head and say, Ken, you're nuts. But 2 of you sit back and say, hey, this makes sense. That's all it takes. 1 out of 8 is all it takes. So we can win this year if we get the word out. And it's going to be a close race. If you want to hear Tom Corbett's hanging in the balance. I'll talk more about that later, but let me just wrap up. Say that vote Libertarian this year. Talk to your friends, have them vote Libertarian, because if they keep on voting the way they've been voting, they're going to keep on getting just what they've been getting. And I don't know about you, but I have had enough. Now, that's the end of my typical stump speech. And at this point, I would open it up the floor for questions. But before I do that, I'll do that in a little bit. I'm going to talk to you guys, libertarian to libertarian. I'm going to talk about what the campaign is going to look like this year. Not my campaign necessarily, but the Libertarian Party's campaign. It breaks down into 3 pieces. There's the pre-nomination, which is what we're in now. The nomination will happen on February 22nd, Saturday, in Bethlehem. About, 5-6 weeks from now? So in advance of that, I'm visiting as many libertarian organizations as I can. Tomorrow night, I'll be in Pittsburgh. The next night, I'll be in York. Last week, I was in Bucks, Montgomery County. I've been Schuylkill, Sunbury. Last month or so, I've been all over the place. So that's the first part, pre-nomination, where get everybody on the same page so we all know where we're heading. Because the second part is the important part. Once the nomination is done, we've got to get on the ballot. This year, we have a lucky break. Typically, we need about 10 times as many signatures to get on the ballot. When I ran in 2002, Ed Rendell needed 2,000 signatures. I needed 21,028. Even though the Constitution says all elections shall be free and equal. Obviously, some people are more equal than others. This year, though, the number is lower, relatively low. The number is 16,639 signatures. That's how many we need minimum to get on the ballot. The goal is to get about 33,000, so that way we can withstand a challenge. And I have to put in a plug for what a great job John Carr did in our last ballot challenge. I think it's because of him and a few others, but primarily because of him that we got through that with his database work, putting together that fine database of voters, so we could sit there and we could verify every signature ourselves. Great work, John. Thank you. But we're going to go through it again. We start collecting signatures on March 12th, which is why our convention is on end of February. So we have everything in place come March 12th, and we have until August 1st. That's the size of that middle piece. March 12th to August 1st to collect our 30,000 signatures.
That's about the only good piece of the process is that we get like 4 or 5 months.
I know. Some of them are warm.
But we have to start at the beginning.
Well, hang on, John. I mean to disagree with you, but let me disagree with you.
Right.
There is one thing we can do, which is golden. That is to collect our signatures on primary day. 1994 was the first time I ran for public office. I ran for state rep. And I got a handful of people, 6 people, put them in the busiest polling places in Abington Township. And as people come out, you say, excuse me, you're trying to help democracy in your neighborhood? Would you like to sign a petition to get the Libertarian Party candidates on the ballot? And in my experience, about 1/3 of the people signed. When we counted up signatures, at the end of that day, we had over 1,000 signatures. Just from less than a dozen people. What I want to do is I want to take that idea statewide. So that on May 20th, on primary day, we get as many people as we can at the busiest local polling place in your neighborhood. Just get signatures. Collect those signatures. Because I think we can dispense with the petition drive in one day. So tell your boss, May 20th, you're not coming into work. We're going to be collecting signatures. This is it. Last time when I ran, I spent about $30,000 on paid petitioners. That's $30,000 that didn't go into commercials. $30,000 that didn't go into literature. $30,000 that went in the wrong direction, getting on the ballot. We're aiming for a 100% volunteer drive. May 20th is that day. And if it turns out for some reason we fall short, we've still got June and July to catch up. So that's the middle part. After that comes the third part, the fun part. It starts on August 2nd. That's when you're on the ballot. Who's running for public office before? Anybody? Let me tell you what happens the minute you're on the ballot. The phone starts ringing. The mailbox starts getting filled up. You start getting invitations to debates, to candidates' nights. Reporters call you up. They ask questions. They write down the answers. They print them in the newspaper. And it's free. You get tons and tons of free media. When I ran for governor back in 2002, I was on 4 televised debates. 2 of them were televised nationally. After the first debate, San Francisco Chronicle picked up on my race. They were reporting on me constantly. They were impressed by one of my sound bites. It was on same-sex benefits. I said, well, what's good for the goose and the gander is good for the goose and the goose and the gander and the gander. They quoted that and they just followed me from then on. So that third part, this is why we're doing this, for all of that free media. I got an email a couple days ago from a young guy, and he says, you don't remember me. You came to my school. I was too young to vote. You got me interested in libertarian politics. Now I'm a card-carrying libertarian. I've talked to all my friends about it. I want to help your campaign. This is what we do. When you're in that third part, we bring in people by the droves. Plus, I'm a Toastmaster, so I know how to conduct myself on a stage. In fact, that was something that came out of the 2002 race, is that of the 4 of us who were running, I was the one who handled the stage the best. You can make up your own minds about that. So there it is. Phase 1, pre-nomination. Phase 2, the petition drive. Phase 3, the fun. Now, I'm here for this pre-part. First of all, to introduce myself so you know who I am, so you feel comfortable when you come to the convention, maybe you'll vote for me as your candidate for governor. But why I'm here is because in order for our petition drive to succeed, we need people running for office. Now this year, they're all higher level offices. There's no school boards, there's no town councils, nothing like that. There's governor, lieutenant governor, state senator, state representative, and Congress. That's it, just these 5 races. One of my main goals in coming here tonight is to find out who might be interested in running for state rep. Typically, it only takes about 300 signatures to get on the ballot. And you're going to be out there on primary day anyway getting signatures. You may as well have your name on the petition. One nice thing about Pennsylvania law is that we can stack names. So we'll have governor, lieutenant governor, Congress, state senator, state representative, and one signature will count for all of them. So I'm looking for people who will be willing to run for state representative, or state senator, or Congress, because that way that'll help us get our signatures. Plus, there'll be somebody local who will be able to get the excitement up. Because nothing excites a county organization more than running candidates for office. I can tell you that from first-hand experience. Now, a lot of people I say, oh yeah, run for office. The first thing they're like, oh no, not me, not me. Because they don't know the first thing to do. They get scared in front of the room. Best thing you can do right now, and this is one of the other reasons why I'm here, is asking you to join Toastmasters International. How many people are familiar with Toastmasters? Most of you. Good. The purpose of Toastmasters is to provide a supportive environment to learn public speaking and leadership skills. I'm a product of that training. I've been a Toastmaster now for 16 years. I used to be afraid to get up and speak in public. Now, of course, I've been on national television. I remember before I was a Toastmaster, I went to my congressman, he had a town hall meeting. I just had a question for him. I wanted to find out about the space program. I'm a big space buff. And I started to ask the question. And before I got done, I was my attack. And I couldn't finish the question. I was so nervous. Toastmasters took that and changed all that. Now I can talk to a crowd of thousands just as easily as I talk to this group of people here. And more capably. We libertarians, we have the best message on the planet. Freedom. But that message is useless if we can't communicate it. Toastmasters give me the ability to communicate to crowds, small crowds, large crowds, even one-on-one. So that's one of the reasons I'm here. Actually, let me go over it again. The reasons are, number 1, look, tell your boss, May 20th, you're taking off. Consider running for office. We need as many of these candidates as we can. I'm going to try and get every single state rep seat filled. If I can get half of them filled, that will make history in Pennsylvania. A third party has never had 50% of the seats covered. Never. It's happened once nationally in 2000 for Congress. The Libertarian Party had a little more than half of the seats covered. And I'm proud to say I was one of those candidates. You can be proud to say you're going to be one of those guys to do it in Pennsylvania, or girls. I'm from Philadelphia, I say guys for everybody. You could be one of those guys and set history in Pennsylvania. And the third thing, of course, is join Toastmasters. Take off May 20th, become a candidate, join Toastmasters. So there are my big 3 things. And with that, let me now open up the floor to any kind of questions on any subject at all. Thank you for your attention. Much.
Why, I mean, out of the primary, why not going in?
Because when, in Pennsylvania, you're allowed to leaflet people. Here, vote for me, vote for me. I don't know about you, when I walk in, I'm like, leave me alone, I'm just here to vote. But when people are coming out, they're done. Nobody's paying attention to them. They just exercise their franchise. They're feeling very patriotic. When you come up and say, excuse me, would you like to support democracy in your neighborhood and sign to get the Libertarian Party candidates on the ballot? Sure, why not? Give me somebody to vote against. Or whatever their reason is. But that's it. You want to get them on the way out, because that way you're not competing with that phalanx of old party people right now. You know what my brother does? He says, sure, I'd like your thing. Where's the list of endorsed candidates? Ah, here they are. Then he goes in and he votes the other way. But I digress. Yeah, man.
Oh, I feel like there's a huge opportunity to reach the young people in college or just that are beginning to be interested in politics. They may have been, bummed out by the current state of things, but they want to get more involved. And I was wondering what your plan is to reach those people.
Ah, that's a great question, and it's one that I've already answered. In 2002, more than half of my appearances were at schools. Mostly colleges, a lot of high schools. I made it as low as 3rd grade. You should have heard some of the questions I got from them. Does it hurt your feelings when the other candidates pick on you? Things like that. It was as cute as anything. But no, I focused last time on the schools. I'm focusing this time on the schools. In fact, I already have a volunteer right now lining up different schools. Matter of fact, you guys can do that too if you want. Call your local college, call your local school, say, hi, I'm with the Krawchuk 14 campaign, and would you like the candidate to come visit your school? Maybe you're having a democracy day or some kind of a forum or whatever it is. Maybe you can come to a political science class or something like that. Can we set up a date? You can do that. I hereby empower you all. Contact your local schools. Get me in there. Like I said, more than half of my appearances last time were in schools. And schools are a blast because they're typically liberal bastions. There was one that I went to. There's this, she's a short principal. She's like, I don't want to hear anything about the war on drugs from you. Nothing at all. And I said, well, if there's a question. And sure enough, wise guy, 8th grader in the back. Yeah, do you think pot smokers belong in prison? And of course, I go through my, releasing murders and rapists, making pot smoking Grateful Dead fans and everything. And she's looking daggers at me. I was so happy. It was a good time. Anyway, yes. And something I mentioned earlier, I just want to make sure I get it on the video as well, is that the average age of the Libertarian Party has been dropping. When I first joined the Libertarians back in '93, it was up in the 40s. Now it's down around 30. And I credit Ron Paul with that. Great man, I'm glad he was there. Yeah, Ron Paul rocks. Other questions?
It's more of a policy question, but you mentioned from a tax standpoint, a goal of phasing out personal income tax over 4 years. What is the plan to either replace that revenue or cut where that revenue is typically going? What does that look like 4 years later?
I'm glad you asked that question, because I'd love to have put that in my stump speech, because it is a key point. How do we pay for this? The answer is the separation of society and state. That, as I mentioned before, is the theme of my novel. Right now, the state is taking care of too many things that are actually societal responsibilities. Things like drugs for seniors, education, even running traffic lights, setting standards. All those things, they're not government things, they're societal things. But there's nobody who's doing them, so the state takes them on. So one after another, we wind up with more and more of these giveaway programs, more and more of these meddling programs. And it's reached the point now where 80% of Pennsylvania's budget, 80%, is giveaway programs. Federal level, it's not as bad, 60%, but federal is galloping a lot faster. They're catching up to us, they'll be there soon enough. What I'm proposing is that we separate society and state. And I mean literally. Let's have a new organization, call it society, which will take over responsibility for all these feel-good programs. Now, society will look just like government. In fact, it would use the same blueprint that government uses. So on the federal level, there would be a president of society, a Congress of society. On the state level, there'd be a governor of society, state senators, state representatives of society. And on the local level, there'd be a mayor of society, town council of society. You get the idea. But the big difference between government and society is that society does not have the coercive power of taxation. In fact, it has no coercive powers at all. It's strictly 100% voluntary. So society could pass their own law. I call them guidelines because they don't have any force of law They could pass a guideline saying, let's get some drugs for the seniors. Let's get some special education for the kids who need it. Let's get traffic lights in the corner, whatever it may be. But in order to pay for it, they would have to raise the money voluntarily. Bake sales, fund drives, begging letters in the mail, just like Channel 12 does. So they could vote for whatever they want, but they're going to have to ask for funding to pay for it. What we do is start offloading these programs out of the state and over to society. Separate society and state. Now I know a lot of people who run for society. All these liberals who really care so much about the poor, I care about the poor too. That's why I don't want government taking care of them. I care about them so much. The poor are too important to be left in control of the government. Instead, let's do it in society. I could see Sally Struthers wanting to be president of society. Jerry Lewis be her attorney general. All these people who do so much for the people who need help. But that's my plan, to separate society and state so that we can start cutting the size of government, coercive government, where they tap into your bottomless wallet all the time, and instead, a generous, caring society which will preserve the safety net without all this exorbitant stuff that's going on now. I mean, how many stories do you know about people on welfare who drive Mercedes and things like that? This would end all of that. Plus, it would cut your taxes. And Americans are the most generous people on the planet. They give all the time. So here's a disciplined approach to helping people, a disciplined approach to keeping the safety net without holding a gun to somebody's head to pay for it.
So real quick follow-up. So I mean, and I'm not as familiar with the Commonwealth Constitution. So I'm sure there's a outline of the different powers that.
Here,
I'll let you tell me. So I mean, how do you distinguish between the powers that the state should be doing versus society? So I mean, we were having this conversation earlier in terms of, obviously there's some things that are more clear-cut than others. But when it came to public roads or police, how do we define between state and society issues?
It's pretty straightforward. The role of government is to protect the rights and property of the citizens. Period. Anything beyond that is a societal role. So government is here for the courts, the police, federal government for the coinage, defense of the nation, borders, and everything else, unless it's mentioned in the Constitution, goes over to society. Now, the only welfare mentioned in the Pennsylvania Constitution is for widows, blind, and families of veterans in certain limited circumstances. That's it. There's nothing there about seniors getting free drugs through the PACE program, nothing about Medicaid, nothing about all those other things. Although education is in here. That's probably one of the ones. So that's the dividing line. Anything that protects the rights and property of the citizens belongs with the state and the courts. Anything else will offload it to society. And it's not going to happen overnight. That's why it's going to be a reduction in the personal income tax over 4 years. Because you can't throw these people out.
Yeah, we talked about that too.
People who are relying on their PACE program or Medicaid or something like that, we can't just cut it. So what we have to do is transfer control over to society. So if anybody's thinking of running for governor of society or something like that, I'll sign on. Thank you for that question. And you should read the book, because not only is it a good book, but it points out step by step how you can transition from a statist society to a societal society. Plus there's some other ideas in there about regulations, and I won't get into that yet. I've talked enough. Another question? Another follow-up, Mike? Is that it?
That was it.
Okay.
Let me just get something clear. When you say society, you're not talking about like actually an organization, right?
I'm talking about an actual organization.
Is this something new? I've never, I mean, is
Correct.
this your idea or is this a
Correct.
libertarian thing?
It is. No, it is my idea. It's brand new. It originated with me.
Is this on your website?
Yes. Matter of fact, if you click on the issues thing, the top issue says separation of society and state.
It's almost what charity should be. Is that what we're talking
Correct.
about? So I mean, churches and non-profit organizations have set up charities.
Not necessarily
society.
organized. Why organized? Why is it organized?
Because people need help.
But not
Are you-
necessarily organized, right?
Well, right now, help comes in two forms. Either it comes from the state at the point of a gun, which is what I'm trying to wean us away from. And the other one is just the patchwork of organizations out there, charitable organizations, churches, United Way, Red Cross, all these other ones. But a lot of people, I don't know, you probably remember, it might have been 20 years ago, a lot of people stopped donating to the United Way because they were actually playing politics with the money. They were supporting these fringe groups and things like that. And people say, I'm not going to do that with my money. Well, if we had society, you could just elect other people and change those guidelines to what you want it to be instead. But yes, it has to be organized. Otherwise, people fall between the cracks. People who truly need the help.
Well, I'm not trying to argue, but isn't that what like local governments are, like even townships, town cities, municipalities? I mean, it ultimately, as not even as an organization, but don't they all kind of chip in? That's why.
Yeah, that's why your taxes are so high.
Yes, no.
They're holding a gun to your head saying, you're going to help this little old lady.
Without having to do that, without relying on government, doesn't each, like say, let's say, like a town, kind of just provide naturally their own resources for a compassionate organization.
It'd be nice if it worked that way, but I guess I don't see it working that way. I've run for township commissioner in Abington Township 4 times now. And yeah, they have things that help the community, but they're all funded the same way.
But like,
at the point of a gun.
let's say Catholic Charities or the Red Cross.
Okay.
Their organization, and they're everywhere. And they do good enough? I mean, isn't that?
Well, I like what they do, but I think we could do it better. And let me give you one example. It was, 2 years ago now, the Jamaican earthquake? Red Cross was flooded with donations. They didn't know what to do with all the money. It just sat there. They bought like 1 million tarps, and then they couldn't distribute the tarps. They just weren't ready for that kind of an onslaught. And they're only looking at one small piece of the problem, just the Red Cross piece. That's why we need the larger version, society, which would have the larger picture in mind. And people would donate, and once the immediate crisis was dealt with, well, in this past case, there had been money left over. So now we could afford to have some other guidelines we could pass. We could afford to help other people. It'd be done on a more organized basis. I mean, FEMA is another example, and especially the crowd of libertarians. I don't have to go into details about them. They're not exactly the best. So what we're going to do is we're going to have an organization whose only job is to help people who need help. They're not distracted by any of these other things going on, like police trying to catch murderers or things like that. Government can focus on its job, protecting the rights and property of the citizens.
I would say.
Feel free.
I mean, and I'm kind of new to this, but the idea of libertarianism is smaller government.
Correct.
So you're replacing a large government with a small government and a shadow government.
It's not a government. They don't govern. They have absolutely no coercive
But you
powers
did say that you'd be electing mayors and leaders.
of society, but they have no coercive power. There's no governing that they're doing. They're administrators. They administer charity. Thank you. You know, this is another reason why I'm at it. One of my personal reasons is because I want to get the questions in front of a friendly audience. Let's see. Yeah, you didn't have a question yet.
Okay, as governor, how would you maintain your principle in not stand up to the federal incentives and not take, let's say, Title 4D, child support bonuses, and all the other incentives from prisons and rehabs and other things, family destruction? How would you be able to not take those incentives, federal incentives?
Well, there's two answers to that. One answer is looking to the past, the other is looking forward. If we're looking to the past, what's there is already there. And there's very little I can do about that except just use the power of the governorship as a bully pulpit to try to wean us off of those dollars. But going forward, I'm just going to veto it. Line item veto, I'm going to defund these things. If federal government says, you've got to pass a law to do this, well, good, they passed the law. but I'm unfunding it. So I can take care of it that way. So looking backward, not much we can do. We just try and wean ourselves off it. Going forward, I just won't allow it to happen as governor. No, any kind of federal dollars like that, I mean, it's bad from a whole bunch of viewpoints. The first one is, I look at it like an addictive drug. Federal government can, here, have some money. Here, let me give you $1, man. But it's like a drug, because when you take one, you're going to want another, and then another. Next thing you know, you're hooked. And there's a second aspect to that. Do you know what happens when you send $1 to Washington? Do you know what happens to that dollar? First thing that happens is 2/3 of it vanishes into bureaucracy. And this is what comes back to the states. But the state has their own bureaucracy. You're lucky if you get a dime on the dollar coming back. And when it comes back, it doesn't go to you, it goes to my political buddies instead. They play politics with your money. That's why we don't want to do that. That's why we've got to wean ourselves away from these federal dollars. If we kept that dollar local, you could feed 10 times as many hungry people. You could house 10 times as many homeless people. Why are we cutting in the feds? Good question. I'm giving an excuse to tear up a dollar bill.
And hopefully you won't stock in the Scotch Tape Company.
I did this in 2002, and I did this on national television, which is pretty cool. And Mike Fisher, the Republican, he went ballistic on that. The day after I did it, he called a press conference to have me barred from future debates. I couldn't believe somebody called and says, Ken, Mike Fisher's on TV talking about you. No. Yeah. And that's what he went to the Secret Service to say, he's tearing up dollar bills. And this is when that DC sniper was shooting out of the trunk at people. He's bothering the Secret Service. Ken's tearing up dollar bills. Is that okay? Mike, get a life. And of course I was like, so I took advantage of the situation. That evening, I had my own press conference in York. Carl Spangler runs Central Family Restaurant. He's a libertarian. So I said, sure, let's help a libertarian. So put me cable networks in there, all the TV crews and everything. And what I did is I brought some dollar bills with me, I taped them back together, and I bought my dinner. And they're interviewing Carl, and Carl, did you accept that money? Well, yeah, I get torn dollar bills all the time. And people spend them. Yeah, people spend them. Made Mike Fisher look like a fool. Make him look like a fool. Anyway, thank you. By the way, this is what you learn in Toastmasters, how to use props. Yep. And you learn that once you're done with it, you set it down, because it's a distraction. Next question. John.
What the idea you're advancing about society is in some respects similar to a concept that I've personally thought about, although not written a book, advancing, which is to view the welfare state as a combination of insurance and charity. So right now, for example, if we take the raging healthcare debate, if you have a heart attack on the street, an ambulance is going to pick you up and drop you at a hospital, and the hospital has to treat you, the ambulance company has to take you.
Yep.
Well,
at the point of a gun, they're required by law.
At the point of a gun. Well, if you think about it, you don't need the point of a gun to tell people to have health insurance, because if you don't have a means of responsibility, the hospital, once they look at you and can safely and absolutely determine that you don't have the means for paying it, can take your gurney and drop you back at the curb. That's all you need there, and you make the welfare system a participatory system, because people support welfare systems because they have fears about being in a bad place, needing health care when they can't pay for it. So rationally, people don't need a point of a gun to participate. We need an institution that provides it. And whether you call it society and it runs sort of like an elected democracy, or if you have competing welfare states that you enroll for a welfare state, that's you're guaranteed that you're not going to get wheeled to the sidewalk when the hospital determines you can't pay for the coronary you just had.
That's right. That's the safety net. Society would perform that.
Right, and so it's a similar idea but a different implementation, and it doesn't. And I think the important thing is that we advance that we need to relook at the government doing everything.
I agree. You know, one thing that people pick on libertarians is they say, oh, you're cold. You want to eliminate Social Security. You want grandma eating dog food. Well, I guess in some cases that could be a fair statement, because a lot of people just get up and say, no, abolish Social Security, or abolish the PACE program, or whatever it is. But people depend upon it, and you got to have that safety net there, and that's what the purpose of society is. And I wouldn't call it democratic. Eleemulsionary is the word. E-E-L-E-M-O something or other. I couldn't spell it off the top of my head. Eleemulsionary. But that's the approach. And also insurance. I have an insurance agent license. I don't sell insurance. I use it in the information technology business. And I can tell you one of the reasons why Medicare costs are so high, medical costs are so high, is because the government is regulating everything. They regulate the insurance companies, and through them they regulate the hospitals. They regulate who can nurse, they regulate who can be a doctor, they can regulate the drugs, who can dispense the drugs. The government controls the entire medical profession. That's why it's hard to change, it's calcified, that's why it's expensive, it's a monopoly, it's a government monopoly. What we need to do is break those chains. That's one of the other aspects that I mentioned in my book. Because when you separate society and state, not only do you separate charity from the state, you separate the regulatory from the state. So what society could do is pass a guideline saying, here's what we think a doctor should be. They should have this many years of education, this many years of internship, demonstrated knowledge in this area, the other area, and then you could say you're a doctor. So now me, I could just go up and look at that and say, no, 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 no. I'm an acupuncture guy. I don't have to do any of that stuff. That's not what I do. So I can hang out a shingle and call myself a doctor, but I can't call myself a societally approved doctor. Now, the guy next door to me says, oh no, I meet all society's requirements. I'm a real doctor. Well, that's good, but there's alternative medicine that we really need to take into account. Right now, alternative medicine is being pushed out the door, especially in areas like cancer care, and not just in medical terms, but also in private things, like hair braiders have to get a beautician's license. Why? It just doesn't make sense. So what you can do is you can decide yourself whether you're going to meet society's guidelines. If you do, you can advertise that fact. If you don't, you can't. And if you do say you meet society's guidelines when you didn't, that's fraud. We can throw you in jail now. So society would control the standards for what it takes to become a doctor, insurance agent, FDA, that is food pure enough, is your medicine approved, has been tested well enough. All these things could be done on a voluntary basis. So if you're dying of some rare disease and FDA says, sorry pal, you can't have that drug, you're going to die. No, you can say, all right, fine. I'm dying anyway. What can I lose by trying out this experimental medicine? Right now the FDA won't even let you try that. But if society were controlling the certifications, then you could. Let's just say they come into this bar. If it had a little star out front saying, certified by society, you come in here knowing that the paint, the ceiling's not going to crumble into your food, that the kitchen meets certain cleanliness, all sorts of things. I think you get the idea. It'd be up to you to decide whether or not you want to patronize the place. That way, new ideas can come out quicker. You could try out new ideas. If you wanted to go to a bar that allows cigarette smoking, go there. If you don't, don't. It puts the control back in your hands, the individual, the smallest minority there is. Good question. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm having fun. That's what Toastmasters does to you. You know, after a while you get comfortable up here. You know the questions. I've been around this block before. I slept a ton of issues we haven't even touched on yet. Like the big A word or something like that.
I just wanted to add, I like this concept. It's new to me and it's interesting.
Thank you.
And I think that you could get the very passionate people involved from the start that really love this area that they're working on, and a lot would come of that. So.
Yes, you know, you asked me before we started here why I'm running this here. That's one of the reasons, is to get that idea of the separation of society and state out there. Because it's bankrupting us. Right now, at federal level is where it's really showing up the most. Because what's the budget now about? I know my numbers may be 6 months old now. The federal budget is about $3.5 trillion. Federal income is $2.3 trillion. So we got that gap, $1.2 trillion that's being borrowed. But the interesting number is that, do you know what the welfare state costs at the federal level? $2.2 trillion. So of that $2.3 trillion coming in, virtually every dollar is going right out the door to giveaway programs. So everything else in government, defense, the cost of the White House, NASA, Amtrak, veterans, retirement benefits, all that's borrowed. And the cost of the welfare state at the federal level is accelerating. Nobody has any idea how to stop it. Well, sequestration. Sequestration was a joke. That only cut the rate of growth of government. It didn't cut any budgets. It just, instead of growing 10% a year, is growing 6% a year. I forget what the exact numbers are, but that's all it did. Nobody has a plan to end the spiraling costs. The only one that I ever heard is to separate society and state. And that's one of my personal reasons for running this year. If you go to my book has a website, atlassnub.com, and I have a radio commercial I did for talk radio, and it capsulized everything I just said into 60 seconds. But enough of that. I'm out here to sell books. But if you want, I do have one copy. By the way, this is the published version. I have a director's cut version, which is twice the size. Who's read Atlas Shrugged? Well, not that many. Wow, this is a libertarian audience. This picks up exactly where her book ends. In her book, Eddie Willers is stranded on a dead train in the desert. Chapter 1 opens up. Eddie's still on that dead train in the desert.
You ruined it for me.
Sorry?
You ruined it for me.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I said you ruined it for me. I didn't know how it was going to end. The other one.
Oh. Spoiler alert. I'm sorry. Any other questions? No. I see my battery hasn't died yet. Most of my other meetings, the battery goes before the questions run out. But run out of questions.
So let's go back to actually winning. I mean, and that's what last month I came to this for the first time, and great conversation. 2 years from now, 10 years from now, 10 years ago, I'm not sure how much has changed in terms of actual policy. So I know we talked about 1 in 8. So I mean, how do we, when I look at Philadelphia, and part of it is the population that votes is just so uneducated in terms of who they're voting for. I don't know, how do you see actually making an impact to get to that 1 to 8? I mean, right now it's easy to say, oh, 2 out of this crowd. We're talking about 1 out of every 8 eligible voters in the entire Commonwealth. That's a lot of people. I don't know. How do you win? How do we put that 1 and 8 into action?
Well, I have 2 answers to that. First one is, God bless Ron Paul. It's like, I don't know if you ever walked through waist-deep snow, but it is like impossible to walk through waist-deep snow.
Unless you're following someone. I've
been on the Appalachian Trail like that, and that's a trip and a half. But I'm not first. Ron Paul's in front of me. What he did is he's blazed a path. It's still rough, but it's a lot easier going for me because the people who supported Ron Paul the most are the young people. People in the colleges, people in the high schools. They are going to be our shock troops. They are going to be the ones who are going to be out there voting. They are going to be the ones who are going to be out there getting people to do things. They're already constituting a large number of my volunteers. The guy who set up my Facebook page, I didn't do it. What am I? I'm 60 years old. What do I know about Facebook? No, I'm an IT guy. I know a lot of that. But he said, Ken, you gotta have a Facebook page. I said, dude, you want to set it up? Yeah! And he's administering it for me. So he takes care of all these things for me. The young people are the ones who are going to be doing this. So Ron Paul got them fired up. Now they're looking for somebody to do something, and it's all over the state. And this comes back to what I mentioned with you before. I'm focusing on the schools. I did it before, I'll be doing it again. So, that's the one part there. We have an in among young voters in Pennsylvania. Something else I mentioned is that the average age of the Libertarian Party is now approaching 30. It's been dropping dramatically over the years. We've got all the young people. They're the ones who are really rowdy. Now, that's one side. Now there's the other side, and I wish the battery would die so I could tell you everything about this, because Governor Corbett is in trouble. He commissioned a poll. John's on the state board. Anybody else on the state board? No. We have an attorney on retainer who advises us on state party business. He warned us a couple months ago about this year. He said that Corbett did a poll for his own purposes, and he found out that if there is a Libertarian in the race for governor this year, he loses. If there is not, he just about wins. We Libertarians right now hold in the palm of our hand the governor race. That's another reason why I'm running this year, and that was the specific reason why I announced. Because ballot access is a mess in Pennsylvania. I got to get 16,639 signatures, and Corbett's only got to get 2,000? Do you know why? Because he said so. Against the Constitution. We have a bill called the Voters' Choice Act, which will even out those voter signature requirements. Senate Bill 195. You should call your state senator and tell them to support a state representative. So I thought, gee, if I'm in a position where I can deny Governor Corbett the election, why don't I do something about it? So I called Governor Corbett in October. And I said, listen, I heard about your poll, and I'll tell you what, I will withdraw from the race. I won't run next year if you get the Voters' Choice Act passed before our convention in February. Now, Mike Fulmer, Senator Fulmer, who's the prime sponsor of our bill, I told him about this idea. He's like, he was overjoyed. He says, this could work, this could work. So we went to Corbett. Corbett said, well, let's see, let me think about it. He went away. 2 weeks later, he came back. He says, nah, forget it. 2 days later, I announced my intent to form an exploratory committee. So that answers your question right there, a longer answer. A couple days later, website up. A couple days later, I guess it was maybe a week later, I made my first visit to Schuylkill County. And I've been rallying Libertarians, because it's not now just about the governor race, it's also about state representatives. It's about setting history in Pennsylvania by having a majority of the state representative seats covered. He's messing with us, he's going to get a fight. If he doesn't want to pass it, fine. But you know, Republicans aren't the only people in the state who paid attention to what went on in Virginia in the last election. What happened?
Libertarian governor candidate got, what was it, anywhere from 6 to 8% of the vote. I forget the guy's name, I don't remember his name, but I do remember hearing about it.
And who paid for it? The Democrats. The Democrats gave him hundreds of thousands of dollars in a close race, and now Terry McAuliffe is the governor there. I'm going to the Democrats, and I'm saying, listen, I will run if you pass our Voters' Choice Act. And those wheels are turning right now. Now what are they going to do? We'll see. But the point is, it's going to be an exciting year. We're on the edge. And Mike, that's a long answer to your question. There's two sides of it. First of all, we got the young on our side. Republicans have been dying to get the young. They were stupid for tossing aside Ron Paul. They could have revitalized the entire Republican Party. They're sitting there on the table. These are aware people. They love liberty. They know they're being hornswoggled. They know they'll never get Social Security. They're looking for a home. Libertarian Party is their home. That's the one side. And the other side is the nation is going to be watching this race. And the Democrats are going to be helping them. Now, in 2002, this is not new territory. In 2002, I had direct Democratic help for my race. And the camera's still running, so I can't tell you all the details, but let me tell you some of the simple stuff. The last League of Women Voters debate, the league said, no, Ken, you can't be in the debate. Ed Rendell went to bat for me. He wanted me in there because the common wisdom is we draw from the Republicans. Actually, we draw from both sides, but don't tell them that. So he did that, and he did a few other things too, and maybe after, I'll know when my camera battery dies, maybe I'll talk about more about that. So the point is, I've already done this in 2002. This is already a blazed trail. Good question, long answers, my apologies.
Ken, can we wrap up?
We can wrap up at any moment, John. I'm here at your sufferance. I appreciate the opportunity to come here and practice. This video will be going up on my website tomorrow. And I'd like to thank you all. Next basic message, May 20th, tell the boss you're taking off. Who's going to run for public office? You got a great presence. And a woman always gets more votes than a man. So we need somebody to run for office. And the third one is to join Toastmasters International. And if you mention my name, they know me around here. I've been around Toastmasters a while. With that, thank you all very much.